I'm Elisa Parker. We're broadcasting here from the 17th Annual Wild and Scenic Film Fest. It's the largest film fest of its kind in the United States. We have thousands of everyday, extraordinary, I call them environmental action heroes, that come here to our community in Nevada City and Grass Valley to partake in this. We have a veteran here with us of Wild and Scenic, Jon Bowermaster, who's an incredible filmmaker and does all kinds of wild things. We're going to talk a little bit about that, Jon, after we talk about your films, because I know, you talk about the extraordinary adventure. I think that's you. But Jon joined us here from upstate New York, which is your home base.
Hudson Valley.
Hudson Valley. Like, how often are you really even there?
A lot.
You are?
A lot.
Lately.
Yeah,
so lately you're there a lot. Okay.
Well, years ago when I was traveling a lot, doing a lot of National Geographic stuff, I think the least number of days I was at home was 77. So I was at home for 77 days that year.
Gosh.
But now we're doing a lot of shorter films and a lot of more local films.
Right,
so.
and you've done some films, right, about fracking, which a tribute to one of Jon's films is that through all that momentum is fracking is now banned in New York State, which is incredible.
Yeah, unlike California.
I know.
Yeah.
Jon,
Well,
we need you here. We need you to
Well,
talk
we tried.
Well, now we have Governor Newsom, so let's see what Gavin does.
Well, we made a film in New York called Dear Governor Cuomo, which kind of held the governor's feet to the fire in regard to fracking. And then we worked with a group in Hollywood called United.com, United We Stand, United something.
Right.
And we made a film called Dear Governor Brown, again trying to remind the governor that drilling 300 new wells a month in California was not exactly...
Not good. Not what we need.
No.
Not what we need.
So you're saying we need a Dear Governor Newsom?
We do. Yeah, schedule a meeting with...
Let's give him a chance.
Schedule a meeting with him and see what happens. So Jon's here at Wild and Scenic with two films. You have Ghost Fleet and also Seeds of Hope.
Very good.
Is that correct? Seeds of Hope is actually around one of our locals here in Nevada City. Is that Rowan? Mm-hmm. And she is a seed collector.
Yeah, seed keeper.
Seed keeper. I met her a couple of years ago, and I really didn't know much about this. So can you tell us a little bit more about what it means to be a seed keeper and how you featured her in your film?
Well, the great irony is that it's a film based on an effort in the Hudson Valley where I live to regrow Native American seeds. But it stars Rowan White, who lives here in Nevada County. I'm not sure what town she lives in, and has an entity here called Sierra Seeds.
Yeah, around Nevada City or the Ridge.
Yeah,
we have all these different
It's literally
communities.
called SierraSeeds.org, and the double irony is that we'd hoped that she would be here this weekend since we're showing the film, and she is in New York.
Of course,
So,
of course.
Yeah.
What is it, when we think about how all of us can be engaged in this and why we need to care around natural seeds, like seed keeping. How do you explain that to people and why it's so important?
Well, I have to say, I know a lot about water keepers and river keepers. I didn't know much about seed keepers, so I learned a ton. And the film focuses on Rowan, but then a local character named Ken Green, who has an entity called the Seed Shed, which again fosters and protects and preserves seed species. But what Rowan has is this collection of seeds that have been she's inherited over the literally decades and centuries from Native Americans. So there are lots of seeds that have long history. Unfortunately, the tribe that Rowan is from, the Akwesasne, got pushed out of the Hudson Valley and up onto the Canadian border some decades ago into areas where it's not very good for growing. So a lot of the seeds they had, they can't physically grow there because it's the wrong soil, the wrong temperatures. So they were offered an opportunity they were given a piece of land in the Hudson Valley to grow not just corn, but beans and squash as well. And so it's grown there, it's nurtured there, and then it's harvested and all returned to the Akwesasne up on the border. But they get the Akwesasne, both the elders and the kids, to come down and work on it. And so the film is kind of a document about 1 year in the life of that Native American seed sanctuary.
That's great. And it's also important, too, as we look at GMOs and those specific seeds. I mean, at some point, it's going to be really important that we have these, I call them natural seeds, but what do you call them? What would you call them? I mean, they're really not natural seeds, but they're indigenous to the community.
And they are part of their culture.
Part of the culture, right?
They talk to the seeds. That from a filmmaking perspective, the only, and I shouldn't tell you the behind the scenes story. But
I like to know the behind-the-scenes stories,
well,
Jon.
If you go watch the film, they talk a lot about. They have ceremonies before at the start of every quarter to kind of celebrate the growth season. and they sing and they dance, etc. It's very beautiful, but they wouldn't let us film any of the singing and dancing because that was against their belief system. So they talk about it, and we kind of shut the cameras down. You hear a little music, but it was very. I mean, the whole ceremony part was moving, but with the singing and dancing, even more moving.
Right. Your other film is called Ghost Fleet. Now, this is another topic that a lot of us don't know about. People that are enslaved on ships. This is in Thailand, on fishing boats. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, fishing slaves. Well, I've done a lot.
Fishing slaves.
Fishing slaves. I've done lots and lots of work on ocean-related subjects, mostly on environmental harms and risks, and we've literally made films on every continent about ocean-related subjects. And during the course of that, I learned about the fact that many of the men who work on commercial fishing boats are slaves, especially out of Southeast Asia. And I knew that was something. I started talking about it maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and it took me a while to figure out the story and find the right partners and find the money, etc. But over the course of 6 years, we made a film looking at the issue through the lives and stories of men who'd escaped from
Wow, I was
slavery.
wondering how you shot this.
Yeah, we couldn't. I mean, I was going to say, in a perfect world, you would put a little lipstick camera behind your ear and jumped on a boat, but you would have had to spend 9 months at sea and probably would have gotten killed. Possibly,
right? Yeah, and so, how did you connect with the people who had escaped, and how did they escape?
Well, we followed the film follows the explorations of a Thai woman who's made it her mission to find and rescue these guys and help them return home. What happens is these men, mostly in Southeast Asia, and a lot of them in Thailand, but also Cambodia and Laos and Indonesia, get conned into thinking they're being offered a job. The guy will come to their little town. He'll say, we have jobs for you in a shrimp factory or in a canning factory, and just pool some family money and bring your passports and meet us at X. And they show up, and sometimes they drug them or literally Shanghai them. They wake up, they're on a boat, and many of them never see land for years.
Years.
Yeah, and these guys are enslaved in the film. We've got guys who have been enslaved for a year, one guy for 12 years. If and when they do escape, they all want to escape, but they're in the middle of the ocean. And also, when they do come near to land, if they try and escape, often the guys who are on land, who represent the fishing companies, are just as dangerous to them as anyone, because they'll return them to the boat company owners for a fee, basically.
So, you mentioned the one woman who you follow who's looking to help release a lot of these individuals. What are some things that we can all do in being aware of this? Wild and Scenic is a lot of it's focused on solutions as well. So,
yeah. But of course, every documentary deservedly has to come with a what you can do conclusion.
This is a big thing, though.
Well, it's a big one. I mean, it has something to do with knowing where your fish comes from.
Okay.
Whether you buy it in a grocery store or a restaurant. But it's more of a supply chain issue. Our appeal, to be honest, is more directed at the board of directors of Walmart and Target and Costco, because a lot of the fish that these guys catch ends up as pet food. We have a $5 billion a year industry in the United States on selling cat and dog food, and a lot of that comes from the fish meal that these guys are catching. So we need the Walmarts of the world to look at to really trace where their product comes from.
How would you know, as far as the issue with human trafficking, how would we be able to identify those key companies or organizations that are doing this?
Yeah, it's less company names, and it's more about location. And,
okay. So if it's from Thailand.
You go to the grocery store, if the fish is from Thailand, I'd be resistant.
Okay. All right.
Largely.
So I asked you this last night, but I know you've been on so many adventures, Jon. I mean, last night when I asked you about some of the wildest things that you've done, you talked about kayaking all around the world. But for folks who haven't heard those stories yet, what is one of the wildest things that you've done?
Since we're at the Wild and Scenic.
That's right. It's wild. Yeah.
Well, I did this big project where we kayaked around the world, one continent at a time, and choosing emblematic coastlines on each. The most risky, the most dangerous, always is when you're on cold water. So we went to the Aleutian Islands, big on the Bering Sea, big and windy and 34-degree water and big winds. And if you end up out of the boat, you don't have long.
Not a good situation.
And then we did 6 weeks kayaking in the peninsula of Antarctica.
That's
Or
amazing.
Same thing, cold water.
What's the most, like when you talk about the wildlife there, marine life, what are some of the things you've seen and experienced?
Well, I go back to Antarctica very often. In fact, I'm going in 1 week.
What are you going to do?
The National Geographic takes tourists there, and I go as the National Geographic rep.
Wow.
Just to talk about
What a cool
Antarctica and
gig.
show film. Yeah, it's a good gig.
That's awesome.
But the peninsula of Antarctica is a place that's changing faster than anywhere else on the planet as the ice along its edges disappears because of warming sea temperatures and air
Right.
temperatures. So it's really a great opportunity for me to be able to go back on an almost annual basis, and you can physically see the place change from year to year, which is really powerful. So that if you come back home and people say, "Well, climate change, no difference." Well, trust me, there are places
changing.
It's totally changing, and it will have big impacts in the not so distant future. And it's another great reminder that it's happening right now.
In this moment, as we're speaking about it right now. What do you love most about Wild and Scenic?
I can walk everywhere.
That's good.
Yeah, because I go to lots of festivals, and some of them you spend half your time kind of plotting how long is it going to take me to drive to this place or
Right.
that place. That's huge, and the fact that it's all contained in this cool little town,
Yeah.
is great. And I'm a big believer in long connections, and I think Jess said that we could go back in the archives. I think I've been coming 10 or 12 years.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to have you back here, Jon. Jon Bowermaster, the films are Ghost Fleet and Seeds of Hope. And Jon's done all kinds of other amazing films. You worked with Disney Earth, National Geographic. Where can folks go to connect with you and learn more about all these crazy adventures you're doing?
Ocean's 8 Films. 8, the number 8. Ocean's 8 Films.
Ocean's 8 Films. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Jon, for being back here at Wild and Scenic. I'm Elisa Parker. We're broadcasting here at the 17th Annual Wild and Scenic Film Fest. We'll have other stories to share coming up.
Thank you, Elisa.
Thanks, Jon.